All right, so we're holding Taaruvot, Siman Kuf Yud. We're going to be doing Sif Hey today. But before we do Sif Hey, I think it's a good idea to review a little bit the concept of Kavua. Since that's what is, that is a good deal of the Siman deals with that. Kol Kavua Kemechzel Mechzel Domen. Kavua is a very unique deen where things that are known, things that are established, have a special deen of 50-50, where the deen of Roiv does not apply. So even though you have 10 stores, 9 of them selling kosher meat, 1 of them sells treif, you don't know where you bought it, we said that the din is that it's also, even though you have a majority of stores, those stores are there. Now, to clarify what does it mean that they are there, it is understood by the majority of the person to mean that the treifus was there all along. Okay? We'll see that there's a chiluk of when it was Niddah. So we need to make this clarification that for all intents and purposes, everybody would hold that is a kavua midoraisa. That if the treifus was always there was a store that was always selling treifus, whether it was Jewish or non-Jewish makes no difference now, right? And the individual has a doubt, has a suffix where he bought it from. As opposed to another din of called the porish meruba porish, that if the meat came from one of the stores, not that I took it somehow, it was bought by taken by a goy, taken by someone else, it was found in the street. Even though finding meat in the street has its own set of problems, of Basar and is alamina ayin, nevertheless, we learned the halacha of called the porish meruba porish. That's also unique halacha, similar to Roiv, learned from similar sources as the Roiv is learned, that you can go by the majority. A majority is a very, very powerful klal, and we've used it all along in Taaruvot for bitul, but it's also used in other areas of halacha, in the Gemara and other areas that we want to determine what statistically are the chances that came from this or from that. In order to make that determination, we base it on Roiv. So called the porish, that which is porish, which was separated, is porish min the Roiv. That's fine, that's acceptable. But for me to have taken something from a place that is there already, and the treifus is yedua already, that's called kavua. It has a special din of kavua, and we don't apply the din of Roiv. That was the classical, perhaps, the textbook example of kavua. In other words, I know one is treif, I don't know from where I bought it. But we gave 2 other examples. We gave the second example, some may consider it the third example, depending on which sefer you learn. When you learn about Taaruvot, they give you the various shitas, and there are quite a few, so some may have it in a different order. But the second example would be as follows. You know that all the stores in town or in the neighborhood sell kosher meat. All 10 of them. None of them sell treif. So you went and bought meat from one of the kosher stores. Only later on when you came home were you told that there was a delivery from the slaughterhouse that day to one of the stores. There was treif meat there. And of course, you had already bought the kosher meat. What do we do with that? Is there a din of kavua in that or not? So that's the...
What's the question? You don't know whether you don't know whether...
No, you found out that there was treifus after the fact.
No, you know which store had the delivery. You don't
know you don't know.
Or you don't know where which store had the delivery.
Neither. It could be, you're right. It could make a difference. Sometimes you know from which store you bought. You don't know which one had. We're going to get to that. We don't know which one had. But here, the trick is here that the treifus was Niddah after the fact. Okay? As opposed to your case, that will be the third example, which we'll get to that soon. So in the second scenario, the ikar nekuda, the ikar point is that it was Niddah afterwards, that there was treif in one of the stores that you bought meat from. Regardless of whether you know or not, I mean, it was treif. Especially, I don't know if it makes a difference, you know the store, but you don't know which one had the tarfas. Or you don't know the store and one of them had tarfas. It may not really make a difference because the ikar here is that it was Niddah afterwards. So on that we have the famous shita of the ra'ah. that says that that speaks about the din of Niddah lemafreya. That's called Niddah lemafreya. Let me see if I can quote it to you. All right. The din is as follows: that Niddah lemafreya is still called kviya. It's still called kavua, and it's also. In other words, that it doesn't make a difference so much that I knew about it after the fact. The fact that the suffix was noilad, that's what counts, that's what matters here. The suffix was noilad in the mokum kavua, as opposed to what? Where else is it noilad? It could be noilad in Taaruvot. In other words, we have sometimes a situation, as we will see soon, where the suffix lies in a mixture of meat. Which chaticha is it? Right? The isser is not nikar. Okay? Now, in the case that we're talking about of kavua, the isser or the suffix is not in the taruvas, the suffix is in stores. And it could be in a kavua situation. In other words, the stores are kavua. The problem is, but because it was lo noida till after the fact, does that make a difference or not? Because right now, somehow, maybe in Taina, you can claim the suffix is no longer there, the suffix is by me. Well, by me, well, that's also similar to kavua. The suffix was, which store did you buy it from? See? So the Ra'ah, the Shita of the Ra'ah, and those that follow with him, will say it doesn't really make a difference so much. It's still not a suffix in Taaruvot. It's a suffix in a makom kavua, in a place that was there. You just don't know where it came from. You have the suffix is in the place. Doesn't make that much of a difference. In other words, he says it shouldn't make a difference. All it is a gilui milsa, as he calls it, or as the Meforshim call it. Gilui milsa means I'm revealing, I'm clarifying something. The suffix was there all along, right? You bought it. Listen, you just didn't know that it was strafe when you were buying it, that you were not allowed to buy it from there. Had you known, you wouldn't buy it there. I mean, the strafe is there, right? So it's really does not make a difference. It does not really change the din. And according to this shita, it would be asur, lemafreya. That's the Ra'ah. The Chavas Das holds like that. The Shach brings down the Ran, that it's mashma from Tosfos himself, that there's no such a thing as kavua lemafreya. Kavua in itself is a chidush, as we said, and elecha elo chidushoy. And what's the chidush? The chidush is that if you took and you don't know from where you took, one of them is straight, that's when we say the din of kavua. That's a chidush. Remember, kavua is a chidush. But if anything modifies that, it was noida after the fact, that's not the typical case of kavua. Since that's not the typical case of kavua, we cannot apply the isor, the chumrah of kavua, to anything else. So that's the Ran. That's the exact opposite of the Ra'ah. In other words, it's completely mutter, even in a case of kavua d'oraisa. In other words, that you don't know which store you took it from. One of them is strafe. The fact that it's noida after the fact, we don't anymore apply the chidush of kavua to it. So that will make a big difference if it's noida or not noida. In other words, when was it noida? And the Pri Chodosh, I think, holds like that too, if I recall correctly. Now, what's this third scenario? The third scenario, where we said, is also machlokes haposkim, but it appears that the consensus may hold that this is a deraisa, or at least a suffix deraisa, as the Taz brings down, is where you have a situation where one of the stores sells treifas. You don't know which one. You know from which store, however, you bought it from. You get that? This is a third scenario. One of the stores sells treifas. You don't know how, and you don't know which one it is, but you know which store you bought it from. In the first case, you don't know which store you bought it from. You know one of them sells treifas, you can identify, but you don't know if you bought it from that or the next store. You don't remember. So the third scenario, some say it's also a kavua d'oraisa, some would hold that it's only a kavua d'rabbanan. And I mentioned the Bach. I'm not so clear about the position of the Bach. I have to look it up again. But it appears like that many would hold that this is also a kavua d'oraisa. Very similar to the one that you don't know which store you bought it from. Here you know the store you bought it from, you just don't know which one sells treifus. Okay, what we, however, want to concentrate on a little bit is on the din of lemafreya, because that's what Seif Hey speaks about. So we're going to look into Seif Hey, and then we'll explain it a little bit. The Chaber takes the Seif pretty much from the Rashba. Yeah. Right.
The middle case was the one where the delivery was made after the fact.
No, the knowledge, the information received was after I bought. Only the information.
Right, the information was
Right,
after.
right.
And I also don't know where it was delivered. It was part of the chain.
It may or may not be. That's what we're going to see in Seif Hey. It doesn't. It may or may not make a difference. The Iker Chiluk in the second is a din of lemafreya. Do we hold kavua lemafreya or not? The Ra'al says yes. The Ran says no. Now we're going to see that the Shach makes a distinction.
Now, in the other two cases we never mentioned when I passed.
The what?
In the other two cases, I became aware of the possibility that what I bought.
I bought. Then I'm told, hey, you could have bought from a store that is the trade store. I don't know. I have a suffix now.
After the fact, in all three cases.
Right. I'm not allowed to lechatchila buy it from a store. I don't know which one is kosher. Right.
I'm saying
I bought. Somebody comes over to you. Oh, by the way, did you know that one of the stores on this block, even though they all sell meat, is treif? Oh, I didn't know. I thought they were all kosher. They all have a mug and David outside. A mezuzah, yeah.
So.
By the way, in some places I've seen this in downtown, kosher style.
Yeah.
It's treif.
I've seen a mezuzah on a tray first.
That too?
Yeah, it's kind
Yeah. They never took it off. Yeah. Could be.
No, it's a subway downtown.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the problem.
Put it out for the-
Yeah.
No, but here's the question. So, in all three cases,
Right.
at the time that was made, was no knowledge of the fact that someone is selling.
Right. Of course.
It's only in all
Yeah.
three cases after I already purchased it.
The problem arises afterwards. That's how it
That
is.
I
Become aware that there's a problem. Sure. Yeah.
So why would the one where the delivery?
I gave that as an
Why
example.
would that one be special?
I gave that as an example. A delivery was made. In other words, because that was the second scenario where all the stores are kosher. All the stores are kosher. So there's no. So it's therefore. What's the question? The problem is, it's not a real kavua then. After the fact, I realized that a delivery was made to one of these stores that was treif. Okay, it's similar to a store selling treif.
So are you saying that that whether the delivery is or incidental?
No, what happens is it's lacking in its kavua. The treif store was not there all along. That we can call it. It's kavua. What's kavua? Kavua means it's established. It's there. You've taken from something that's been there all along, as opposed to something that may or may not be considered kavua because a delivery was brought and it was Niddah. And the Niddah over here is like you. I mean, similar to what you're trying to say. It was incidental. In other words, it was not Niddah that this place is straight, but I didn't know that before. No, that doesn't make a difference. It was still kavua. That's why there's a machlokes. It's a gilu milsa lemafreya because it wasn't there to begin with. So it's according to the shita of the Ran. That's not a kavua. It was never there. It was never treif to begin with.
It was a justified presumption.
You understand the Ran? The Ran says there's no real kavua here.
There was a presumption it was kosher.
Yes, exactly. I mean, there was no treif there all along. There was no kavua. It was born. The kavua problem was generated by a delivery of the day that should not have been delivered there. So is that still kavua? Lemafreya means I bought from one of the stores that had treif. Well, yeah, but that store was not treif all the time. That's the machlokes. So it's good you asked because
So I'm confused.
yeah.
So we have three cases. We have one case where there is one store that always says it's treif, and I don't remember whether I bought from that.
There are two cases like that.
So what's the difference between the store?
In one case, one store sells treif. I just don't know from which one I bought. In the third case, I know from which one I bought. I just don't know which one is treif.
Oh, but the store. But if I bought from a treif store, then it was one that always sells treif. I don't know where I bought.
Right. No.
Well, I don't know which one it is.
In case number 1 and number 3, there is a treif store that's kavua there all along. Now, I may know, I don't know which one I bought from. That's the typical kavua case. I could have bought from the kosher, I could have bought from the treif.
Or I don't know which one is the treif one.
That's the third case. But I know which one I bought from. I just don't know which one was the treif one. But it was there.
And we're always talking about a situation where I haven't clarified it because of the obvious question. You go back and ask.
Right. Yeah. Then we have the second case, if we can call it the second case, of a gilu misul lemafreya. In other words, that they're all kosher in a sense. A delivery of treif meat came that day, and it was noida after the fact. So it was never a treif. There was never a treif kavua store there to begin with. Does that qualify as kavua or not? That's the machlokes that you have to have in mind here when you're learning, at least Siman Kufyud, that this can make a difference. We will see Mitzvah Hashem maybe Thursday when we have a little bit more of a chance, some various interesting scenarios that have occurred, real stories in Vilna and another story. I don't think we'll have the time today. I'll leave it for Thursday, of incredible, fascinating situations of that there was really a big machlokes between the Rabbanim and what to do. And it deals with, what made it more complicated is with parts of animals. Part of the animal remained in the store, part of the animal was gone. Okay, so what's the din of the animal that remained and the part of the animal that is already gone? You see what I mean? We'll touch a little bit about it today because the Taz gets into a very interesting synopsis of can a half an animal have one din and the other half have another. So we'll talk a little bit about it, but I think Thursday we'll get more into it. Interesting stories that have occurred in the past and how the Chachamim, the Rabbanim, the Poskim dealt with it. And there's various opinions, as to how to do it. So it's very interesting. So that's why I wanted to give you a little bit again, the review of the three scenarios. And what they all have in common is that we're not talking about Taaruvos Basar, right? We're talking about Taaruvos, if anything, closer to a form of Taaruvos Chanuyos. Now, just that in the case of the typical kavua, it's not a Taaruvos Chanuyos, because we said it's kavua. I have the suffix. It's my problem, right? The one who took. And therefore, it's also. Whereas the Taaruvos Chanuyos is the other example. I don't know which store sells treif, but I know which store I took from. So I don't have the suffix. It's a suffix in the Chanuyos. It's a Taaruvos Chanuyos. Still, some say it's very similar to the kavua. Some say it's a kavua de Rabbanon. It's not exactly, but it's still kavua. All right. So, Sif Hey. Mi shelokach basar me'mekulin. Somebody took meat from the butcher store. Mekulin. Beta mitbachayim, as it would be called in another lashon. Ve'afilu chaticha ruya liskabed. Even if he took a chaticha ruya liskabed, he took a piece of meat he bought. What happened is that nimtzes treifa b'makulin. Later on, somehow, they've discovered in this store that he bought from, that there was a treifa. Now what? Okay? He bought a piece of meat, even if it's a piece that it's chaticha ruya liskabed. Remember the din of chaticha ruya liskabed? It's not bottle of filu be'elef, like biryo, like davar shalamin, it's a davar choshev. But here we're going to learn a din, that a person who bought a piece of meat, even if it's a chaticha ruya liskabed, and later on they discovered in this store there were treifas. In other words, piece of meat, an entire cow, whatever, was in this store, it was treif. Velo noidu chatichas a treifa. And obviously, we were unaware at the time of the chatichas a treifa. What does that mean? He put them all in the freezer, they're all mixed up. Okay? And he didn't realize that, he forgot, or whatever, he was told later. Ve'enu yodeh me'ezeh lokach. He came and ordered 10 pounds of ground meat, or goulash, or whatever. He ordered the meat, or cheticha rulas kavi, he ordered, nice size steak. And he doesn't know which one he got. So what's the din? Okay, so these are the words of the Rashba. Mechaber is pretty much quoting the Rashba. What's this? The scenario here is different than the scenarios of kavua, right? Here we're dealing with one store. We're dealing with vadai treifas in this store. We just don't know which one he took home. He's taking home from the store. Where's the suffix now? The suffix was in the store. is this going to be a din kavua or not? Or is this going to be more of a din of taruvos? Why would it be a din of taruvos? Because within this one store, one piece of meat or one cow that's slaughtered, not alive, got mixed up with other meats. So in other words, there has already been a taruvos in this store to begin with. So is this a din of taruvos, which we say chad betrei bottle, except for davar roiv eskaber, right? You understand? Is this a din of taruvos where you have a mixture and you go by the roiv? Or you're going to say, wait a minute, isn't this similar to a kavua din? You took from a store, you don't know which one you took. That's what we need. We need to have the special halacha. The Rashba says, in this case, you don't know which one you took. Anything you took from the butcher store before they've discovered the problem, that they have a treifa, mutar. Remember this din because it will help us later on. Whatever you've taken before you discover the treifa, it's mutar. Why? So he explains, Shelo nofal hasofik b'kavua. The suffix here did not occur in the kavua, ela la'achar shepirish. Only after you've taken it, you've removed it from the store, then we have a suffix. The kiven sharov kosher mutar. Since the rov is kosher, it's going to be mutar. Aval, he adds, likach mikan ve'elech, to take from now on, is obviously asur. V'afilu chaticha she'eno ruya liskabed. Even if it's a piece that is not ruya liskabed, it will be asur to take. But wait a minute, it's batul b'roiv in the store for a different reason. She'ena kol bekin bezeh. Not everybody's baki. What's a chaticha ruya liskabed? Ve'yitu ben ruya liskabed l'she'ena ruya. And we will come to take or to buy even that which is royal liskabed, which is not batul. So if you hold it to taruvos, that's not batul. So it's not batul. Fine, but what about those that are not royal liskabed? Why aren't they batul? Because it's a chumrah. That's what it appears to be. From the words of Mechaber, it appears that the second half of the seif says, don't take from now on any piece of meat, even small pieces of meat. Why? Even though it's taruvos? Because people don't know always the difference. So in this case, don't take any meat. Why? They make a mistake. Appears to be a chumrah. Yes?
It has many pieces in the freezer.
Right.
The taruv can't take from there, or is it from the taruv's pool place?
In the store. Right now you want to go back. Oh, by the way, do you have some eye steak? By the way, do you have, some more meat?
The question I had then, what if you had multiple pieces before, and they're in
Right.
the freezer, and they're all in there, now they're all mixed up in your freezer?
At the butcher's freezer or in your home
Your
freezer?
own freezer.
Oh,
Now
we're going to get to that. A good question. We're going to get to that. There's a nice discussion amongst the poskim as to what happens in your own freezer at home now versus the freezer of the butcher. Because here the problem is much more at the store because it appears to be, or it resembles the din of kavua. And the chidush is that the Rashba says here that this is not a real kavua. Why? Because nofal asofik la'achar shepirish, which is similar, and I'm going to explain, similar, or it reminds us of the second scenario that I gave you, right? Scenario number 2, where the Niddah was afterwards. The suffix was la'achar shepirish. Yeah, go ahead, Moshe.
Yes, after they found out that treifa
Right.
slaughterhouse. If the guy has that, if he still have it in his refrigerator, he can get it out and put it away.
He doesn't have to. Who? The butcher or the one who bought it?
The water.
No, that's what the halacha is. The halacha is that what he took before it became known in the store that a delivery of treif meat arrived there that day or the day before, right? He can have it.
I still don't understand.
Even if it's a ruya liskabed, a big piece of meat.
And if he's sitting,
The one who bought it. The one who bought it is okay. Kol ma shelakhu, whatever they took from the butcher, all the people, the entire neighbor who bought from this butcher before the discovery was made, they can have their meat, they can cook it.
All the meat that was delivered, just some of them.
No, just some.
Some of them.
Yeah.
So there are, in other words, in the butcher store itself, after the delivery, it's perfectly possible to have bought a kosher piece.
Right.
It's also possible
Yeah.
that it wasn't kosher. And now, the fact that there is such a possibility became known to the butcher after you did.
Right. We're going to see in the Ramah later on in Sivov, there's a special din of what happens by Purish in a situation where things came out, separated, that they are mutter, but the remaining are asr, the last two. There's a situation where if everything is moving out, and you're saying call the Porish Beruba Porish, the last two remain asur. Remember the scenario of eating all of them at the same time? You can't. Even though it's batul beroiv, you have three pieces, one is straight, you can't have it all according to some opinions at the same time. But you eat one, it's mutter. And some say not all one individual can eat all three, even if he eats it one after another, because he is for sure eventually going to be poigea be'isr. He's going to be touching the isr. So one individual may not have all three, even if it's one after another. But the chara, everybody would agree that taking one, the first one at least, it would be mutter because it's called the Porish Meruba part. The question now is, what about the last two? The last two that remain, you don't have a roiv anymore. Yeah, so that we're going to see that in the Ramah on this. It really applies to Seif Vav. There's no Ramah on Seif Hey. The Ramah on Seif Vav really talks about a little bit about both, but mostly about Seif Vav. Yeah. What?
Who says it yes, sir?
No, nobody can say. Oh, it's already left, right? Right, but you can't because you don't have a roif in the one that what remains. Yeah. So anyway. So that's why I gave you the introduction of the various scenarios so we can understand Sif Hey. Sif Hey resembles scenario number 2, where the Niddah is after the fact. So the Mechaber simply says, Shalom ofal asofik bekavua, in the kavua place, elo achar shepirish. So since the roiv is kosher, beikar din, there's a bitul beroiv.
If many people
right.
go to the butcher that day and purchase,
yeah.
Is there some way we can quantify? After the fact, now I have I don't know how much was what was.
No, but we know that in this store there's a lot of meat. He's had quarters of animals from before. He's had other meat. He just received some delivery. Maybe he was even told, by the way, 1/4 or this part of this one cow is treif. It doesn't mean the whole store is treif. So the majority for sure. This is a case where we know for a fact that the majority meat at the store is kosher. Otherwise, we definitely have. There's nothing to talk about.
The question was, if multiple people buy, how do you end up quantifying?
No, that's not a problem because whether it's one individual here, he seems to be saying everyone. Whoever bought from this store before the discovery was made can have dinner, can cook his meat, no problem. The question is, what do you do now? Well, the second part of the sif says, from now on, you cannot buy. Now it's a kavua. Now we know there's treif. But wait a minute, it's batul beroiv. You have a lot of meat in the store. Why should this be any different than in your home or anywhere where you have a lot of pieces of meat? Some of it is treif. You don't know which one is the din of batul beroiv. So if it's a chaticha real iskabed, I know why. It's a derabanan. It's not batul afilu be'elef. But he says afilu chaticha she'ena real iskabed. So he explains. I'll tell you why this is different. She'ena kol bekim is buying from a store versus your home is a little bit different. Once the discovery was made, there's a special home. You know what? Don't buy. People are going to get it mixed up. They're not going to know what chaticha ruz kabed is, which one yes, which one not. Don't buy any meat from this store.
Now we don't know which of the meat is this treif, right?
Right, of course not.
So you have to. So the store owner can basically shop.
No, you can sell it to a goy. Sell all the meat to goy. Yeah, sell it to butcher, another goyish butcher store. So anyway,
so we'll take a loss.
Take some loss. Yeah. Now the question will be, and we'll discuss that. What happens if b'diavad somebody bought anyway after the fact? What's the din on that? So we'll get to that. But just a little bit clarification on this mechaber, who takes the words from the Rashba. He simply explains that there is a chiluk of when was Niddah the Isser. And in the Beis Yosef, he seems to imply that this chiluk of Niddah Isser, lo Niddah Isser, is only bekavua derabanan. What's kavua derabanan? Kavua derabanan is when you have taruvos of the chatichas in the store, right? That's where the problem begins. That over here, the Chachamim did not apply the din of kavua since lo Niddah Isser. So the Beis Yosef is explaining the Rashba, that this is what the Rashba really had in mind only. In other words, don't think the Rashba doesn't agree to the Ra'ah. The Rashba is only matir Niddah later on in a case of Taaruvos in a store. As opposed to what? As opposed to you having bought from a store, right? And you were told later on that there is treifas there. I'm sorry, in another situation, that would be too similar to this one. In a situation where you were told, you don't remember from which store you bought it. Okay? And later on there was a kavua, like the second scenario, pretty much like the second scenario that we gave. That would not necessarily be what the Rashba is talking about. So that there's a machlokes here, Rishonim Achronim, mostly Achronim here because the Rashba was a Rishon, as to what the Rashba really holds. So the Beis Yosef says that the Chiddush over here is only betaruvas achatichas, that there's no gzera chachomim of kavua, since it's not Niddah Yisr. But that Rashba would hold like they're all, the Gilul Milsa Lemafreya still applies. In a regular situation, when you found out after the fact that one of the stores was treif that you didn't know, right? Later on, the Isser became known to you, not that you didn't know, that even the Isser became known, that he would hold like the Ra'ah. The Shach says, the Shach makes a chiluk, and that's where you were getting close to saying something. The Shach makes a chiluk that the Rashba would hold like the Ra'ah in a din kavua deraisa. He doesn't know which store he took it from. In other words, and it became known later on that one of them had treifas. As opposed to, you know which store you took it from, you don't know which store had the treifas. So the Shach seems to be making a distinction between taruvos in the chanuyos, or taruvos in other words, that you don't know where you bought it from. In other words, in the taruvos of chanuyos, you know which store you bought it from, but later on, the tarfas became known, and you don't know.
Both cases, actually.
Both cases, the tarfas became known later, but
one time you don't know where you bought, one time you don't know where it was delivered.
Exactly. So there, the Shach seems to be making a difference, making a chiluk that the Rashba would hold that you don't say kavua lemafreya when you don't know which store had the treifas. The Pri Chodesh seems to be saying that the Rashba holds like the Ran completely. Then in a kavua deraisa you don't say lemafreya. In other words, even in a kavua deraisa you don't say lemafreya. In other words, if the Issa became known after the fact, that means it was not there to begin with. You wouldn't say kavua at all. The knowledge. Yeah, right. No, you didn't know. The treifas wasn't even there in the beginning. It became only known later on.
But the physical thing itself, the object was there. Only the knowledge of its presence wasn't there. So isn't that what you're saying?
No. We're talking about, the treifas only became known later on, that this, in fact, there's treif here.
Yeah, so that's the knowledge, not the thing itself. The object was there at the time it was fine.
The store was there, but not the treifas was not there.
So the treifas was delivered after I bought. What's the point?
No, the treifas was delivered before you bought, obviously.
So it was present. It was
Right.
physically present.
Yeah, but that's what makes this
no knowledge
din over here a little bit vague, because it appears to be, in many ways, resembling that second scenario where there is a situation of Niddah after the fact. Now, regardless of how you hold, which interpretation of how the Rashba holds, from the Mechaber it seems to be clear that at least within this one store, we're not going to say that there's a plain taruvos, because obviously we're told that we need to be machmir, but we are going to be meiko that anything that was purchased before, it's okay. So there's still two parts here. There's a part that says I can take whatever I bought before Niddah, because the suffix was not born in the kavua, only la'achar shapirish. The question, how would the Rashba hold in other situations is not so relevant, because here we're dealing with one store and only one store. You follow me? So this halacha is only pertaining to this one store. And the second part of the halacha says that even though everything else is mutter, what I bought before, it will not be from this point on. So there's two halachas here that we need to remember. One halacha is that Niddah, lo Niddah makes a difference, apparently. Does it make a difference everywhere? Well, that's a machlokes, it's a poiskim. at least in this store, the Mechaber seems to be saying, and that's how he learns, that here there's no Gzera Chachamim. With one store, he's only dealing with one. Forget the 10 stores. All right. And the second din is that you have to be machmir. Is this a real chumrah or not? The Torah is very, very puzzled by the Rashba. I'm going to go quickly through this because there's different ways of understanding the Torah, and I don't want to make it more complicated. The Torah is puzzled because obviously he knows what the Rashba is saying, and he says, how could you call this only a chumrah? He's talking about the second part. Taking from now on, don't take about asur of likach mikan ve'elach asur afilu chaticha shelo lo yiskabed. You're saying that that's a chumrah? It should be asur min adin to take it. This place is a kavua place. There's treifas now. You understand the Torah's question? Yeah. So the Beis Yosef is puzzled on the Torah. He says, why are you puzzled on the Rashba? There's no din of kavua here. There's a taruvas inside the store. There was already a taruvas. How could you call this a regular din of kavua? Beis Yosef has a good point. Within the store, the suffix has already been born. And this is a typical taruvas. It's not a kavua. And chaticha that would not be royally skabed would be batal mi'ikar din. So it is a chumrah. Anyway, so everybody here, the Prisha, I think, the Bach, they all try to explain the Torah differently. That's where the Taz gets involved, and the Taz simply has a problem and tries to justify why the Torah has a problem with the Beis Yosef, with the Rashba, in that how could you have a half an animal mutter and the other half asur? In other words, if part of an animal is chaticha ruyus diskabed and the other parts are not, and you're going to say, oh, only the chatichas are ruyus diskabed is asur, but not the rest of it, but it's the same thing. You know, the Taz has a little bit of a problem on how is it possible that part of an animal, if you say an animal is strafe, once you say it's strafe, the Taz is saying, once you say something is strafe, how could you say that other parts of the animal should be kosher?
That's what we're saying. We're saying one of the parts of the animal, has the strength, the power to usher everything, and is never misbakul in uvis.
Right.
Whereas in the other case, we're saying that no, since it's not a release chabad, it has the regular din of it's misbakul in a taruvos. So the question is not that on one thing we're saying it's straight, and the other part of it we're saying it's not.
Yeah,
but the effect that it has on the mitzvah is a different effect because of an additional din of whether it ushers everything or it's misbakul or not.
Yeah, we're going to see Mr. Shem Thursday. Maybe we'll learn the Shach, how he says that he doesn't see the problem that the Taz has for two reasons. But just simply spoken, the Taz says that maybe part of the problem here is that you can't say that this is a chumrah. Why would you say that part of the animal should be asur from now on, right? And the other part of the animal should be mutter. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I remember when I was a child, these mullahs.
Yeah.
There was a guy that took to slaughter, buy it, let's say, and he would bring it. The mullah come in, they would check it at the home.
Yeah.
So they checked it, and the chacham or the mullah would check for everything.
Sure.
But once they were cutting off and taking off, at the end, towards the end, they realized that the goy, that's the sheep, had inserted a needle in them.
Right.
So even though that in the beginning was kosher, but once they got to the end of it, it was strange.
Well, sure, because that's when they finally did a real b'dika, a real examination of it. They realized that there was a hole in the lungs, or in the heart, or wherever, or in the intestines, wherever the hole, a complete perforation would make a treif. And if you discover that, it's a problem. Sure. It makes the whole thing taref, depending on when it happened. Did it happen later on, or did it happen before it was slaughtered? Sure. This has happened. They found needles, because it swallowed. It could have swallowed a needle, which could have perforated,
Chulin is absolutely right.
Yeah, right. In Chulin, sure. Right.
The makom remains kavua until this is gone, or only based on an assumption that normal stuff will be gone?
Well, a place is kavua because it's there. So right now, the meat that's there from now on, I can't buy from there at this point.
Obviously, that's not forever.
And the question is, why shouldn't I be able to buy from now on? Why don't you say taruvas? It's mutter. Lechatchila, I can buy. if it's not a chaticha rui liskabed. So me'ikar adin you would be able to, because the taruvos has already occurred. It was midin taruvos now. So this is, even though the suffix is no longer a suffix, we know for sure there's treif here, right? We already know that there's a treif, but it's like in your home. In some ways, it's like in your home. So what if there's some treif? But does that mean I have to throw everything in the garbage? There's a din of beetle. So the Mechaber says here it's different because we're talking about a store. So I'm going to explain what would the din be in your own home, in your own fridge. Yeah.
In the store, you cannot buy. Then it's all gone.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, all the meat that's in the store right now you cannot buy from lechatchila.
Now, would that even go on pieces that animal said he got from the chicken animal? He only got certain types of meat.
No.
So
right.
It would have to be whatever could be confused with.
Whatever could be confused with, right?
So it's not a knas.
Right. Okay. So real quickly, there's a quick machlokes in the poskim on the din of the Rashba. Is that also true b'di'evet? What he says, don't take from it. Is that also true b'di'evet? The Shach learns that it's mashma from the Torah's chatas, that it's also b'di'evet, and the Taz I think holds that pretty much it applies b'di'evet too, and the reason for it is because of a gzera that you may come to eventually take from that which is kavua, if we're allowed to take it. B'chodosh was matter even b'di'evet, even if you took it intentionally. You went ahead and bought, and we don't hold like that. The Pri Megadim says it's only b'shoikik if it happened by mistake.
The Pri Chodesh was one?
Yeah, Pri Chodesh here. That's right, which was very interesting. Yeah. Now, what's interesting I saw is that the Shach says that this whole this whole Isur of the Rashba is only in a butcher. Why? So he explains what's going on in the butcher. Shchiche Rabin, he says. There's many people that come in and out. And therefore, if you're going to allow the pieces that are not chaticha rui liskabed, you will come to allow also the other pieces that are chaticha rui liskabed. But if it happened in your home, it would be mutter. So maybe we'll talk about this idea of what it means. What does that mean if it happens in your home? Another time. Some say at home it would also be usher. I think the Pri Megadim also says at home it would be mutter. I have to actually see it again inside, the example of how this would be. Let me see if I can quickly find it here. Yeah. Kosav Abach, Naino Tamu Kimish Lewis Ben Makulin who Sharabin Koinim Misham, Korvadova Latoz, it could easily be a mistake. Masha Inkim Ben Isarif Kach Liyochid Bebeisai, if it was mixed to an individual in his home, the Ine Hachmir. Right? In other words, they all got mixed up at home after you bought it. They got mixed up with other pieces of heter that you had at home in your freezer. And some of them were also chatichas ruis iskabed that were not mixed. So that we would hold that in those chatichas that are not royal iskabed, the din would be that if they got mixed with what you just bought, with that which you already had in your home, that it would be mutter. So in the home, we would not have this chumrah. That's, I think, pretty much what he's saying. He's mechalik, at least. Not everybody's in agreement with this. He's mechalik that in the home, we wouldn't have this suffix or this potential problem that you would have in a public place. Okay, real quickly. The Mechaber seems to be a little bit difficult. When he mentions chaticha rui liskabed here, that it could be lechara mutter, but we're machmir. Whoever says that this could be a chaticha rui liskabed, we're talking about raw pieces of meat. You don't have cooked meat in the butcher store. And if you remember from Siman Kuf Aleph, when we spoke about chaticha rui liskabed, right? It doesn't apply to a raw piece of meat. This is a question that's brought down by the Rabbi Elyahu and the Pri Megadim, right? If you remember the conditions for chaticha rui liskabed, what is that? Yeah, cooked liver. Yeah. What is that? A big piece of liver, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, as he says in Sif Gimel, V'chein lo chashiva ru'is ka'elum keni mevusheles. Right over there's all the conditions of what it has to have. So, good question, very good question. So, remember, Mechaber doesn't contradict himself. So why would he say here? Why would he talk about chaticha ru'is kabed here if we're talking about raw pieces of meat? So it seems like the majority of the poskim explain that Mechaber Enochiname holds meikar din. The chaticha ru'is kabed is only something which is cooked, not something which is raw. Here, he's going according to those who want to be machmir even on that. Again, because of the situation of kavua and because of the situation of the store, that he wants to, in other words, tell you what the din is, even according to those who are machmir.
In other words, in a household where the normally still need to be processed because it's one thing.
Right.
In a store, it never becomes cooked. That's how it's handled.
Yeah, there's an interesting Kaf HaChaim on this also. The Kaf HaChaim speaks about also a little bit, discusses this, that if there is no minhag hamakam, then you go the chaticha ru'is kabed is also applicable even if it's raw. He says that's what he says. Unless there's a minhag hamakam, really interesting. Yeah, that's what. In other words, if there's a minhag hamakam that you just basically follow. If it's raw, it's not. But if there's no minhag hamakam, you're machmir. Then anything is a chaticha ru'is kabed even if it's raw. So here, he would be machmir. Yeah, right.
Sell
right.
whole chickens.
Right, obviously. In those situations, yes.
So the question is,
kosher marts, kosher markets.
who's doing the same thing?
Yeah, because we're talking about a mekulin. Mekulin is the slaughterhouse, the butcher store. You don't really have cooked meat. I don't think they ever had it. They weren't set up for that. So it's a good question. Regarding Rabbi Elyahu asked, mekulin doesn't have that kind of a situation. Based on the Mechaber's Shita himself. So they hold, Mechaber would still follow that. But perhaps here he was just presenting the halacha, even according to those who are machmir, that it would work out that chaticha ru'is kabed, of course, it would be an issue here. And it's not only a chaticha ru'is kabed, even those that are not chaticha ru'is kabed would still be an issue because we're machmir. So even though it doesn't really apply, it's a chiddush. Right? Even those who hold it, that it is a problem, according to them, whether it is or it's not a chaticha ru'is kabed, we would be machmir. Okay, I think we'll stop over here.